Hello and welcome. The goal of this podcast is to get listeners connected with others in the sports industry because they say it's all about who you know, and now you know us. Hello, everybody. This is Connor Shank, and you're listening to the Constant Sports Podcast, the podcast that is committed to connecting you to other sports professionals because they say it's all about who you know. And today you will know Tay Hawker. Thanks for joining us today, Tay.
Not a problem at all. Thank you for having me. I'm stoked to be on board with another Sunday Ball.
Yep. A little ASU sports line business connection here. So yeah, we're looking forward to getting into that. And so just for the viewers and listeners at home, Tay currently works as a commercial manager and sports agent with Halo Sports. He's representing well with the shirt on here today. And in this episode, we'll discuss everything from sports business, sports marketing, agents, NIL industry, graduate school, and much more. So dig in, get comfortable, and we'll just hit it off here. And Tay, so I'm curious kind of how, obviously you're from New Zealand, you're from, that part of the neck of the woods. What kind of drew you to the sports industry? Is sports, you have rugby over there and, non-American sports, you say, but what kind of drew you to the sports industry and how'd you get into it?
Yeah, I'll tell the original story. My dad and I, late on a Monday, would have been in the school holiday. It definitely was in the school holidays in our summer. Was flicking through channels. Now we've got ESPN down here, but we get one version of ESPN, and it's ESPN Australia and New Zealand. So they play different stuff down there. And I was probably about 10 years old at the time, and we're flicking through channels and landed on what was American football. The dad knew it as Gridiron. He had seen it on TV once upon a time, but didn't know anything about it. And so we kind of decided as a father-son, we're not doing anything else on this school holiday sort of thing. We're just going to watch this and see if we can figure out this sport. And it was a white team playing a red team, and we were basically had to pick sides to go for. So we picked the white jerseys and we're supporting them. And little did I know it was LSU versus Alabama, and so watched this whole game, and I was absolutely hooked. I loved every second of the game. I couldn't understand it at the time. And I remember watching it being like, this is so fascinating to me, how this school pride, the way that the game presentation was put on, and this is in the early 2000s. Right. And I was just in awe of it all. And so I went away after that, and started to try to do my own research at the, again, early stages of the internet. I was trying to learn more about the game. I remember I was looking at the NFL. I randomly selected the Tampa Bay Bucks to be my team. I hadn't seen them before. And so was watching them. They ended up not being my team in the future, but when I was like trying to learn the game, I was watching a ton of Tampa Bay Bucks stuff. And it was actually Ray Lewis highlights that was the nail in the coffin for me. So I got exposed to the sport, and then I kind of grew this obsession with the product that America created on the sports field. And as the years went on, I realized there was an opportunity to get my degree in America, and move there and live the life there. And so I reached out and managed to get a rugby scholarship at Lindenwood University in St. Louis, Missouri, where I studied sports management and double-minored in marketing and political science. And so that was kind of my foot in the door. I'll be candid though, while I was a student athlete, I was not a good student. And well, frankly, probably wasn't that good of an athlete either, but I was a student athlete, but really focused on the athlete side, and I wasn't doing great in school grades wise until, I'll stop kind of giving the whole story here, but it was the part that kind of started my career was my academic advisor at Lindenwood, Molly Hutchins, told me that there was an internship at the Rams, the St. Louis Rams back in the day. And she was like, you should definitely apply for this. And I remember thinking, first of all, I didn't even think she knew my name or liked me because I was the kid that constantly was failing my classes. And on top of that, I didn't know why I would be valuable. Like I just had a low expectation of myself at the time. And so I got the interviewed, got the internship. So originally started out as a training camp intern with the St. Louis Rams and went from there. But it was, while I was there, the biggest thing for me was that we got to the end of our internship, or end of the day of our first day of our internship, And our job was basically just to blow up bouncy castles and do like
Yeah.
the very lit, pass out drink bottles and everything.
Yeah.
And I got to the end and everyone went home, and I was standing there being like, I'm this kid from New Zealand that is currently working at an NFL team. I just watched the guys train. My mind was just getting blown.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't really like the idea of just going home at the end. And so I just like kind of lingered, and I'd start picking up rubbish, and I just started shaking people's hands and asking if they needed help. So I was helping on autographs, and then handed out drinks at the VIP tent. I was just doing the most random jobs just because I couldn't stomach the idea of going home. And then it was in that moment that I was kind of like, I can actually do this. This is actually a normal work. I'm doing pretty well. People seem to like me. And so my career kind of started from there when I kind of got that confidence from the Rams. So a huge amount of credit to Molly Hutchins is to put me in that position.
Yeah, shout out to Molly. It sounds like there's always those people that we don't expect, or they just come out of the woodworks and they put us here and help us get connected to here. And so I guess as we talked about in the beginning, fellow Sun Devil as well, fellow Sun Devil. So when you were looking, you said you were with the Rams, and your career started to take a different trajectory. Was kind of a sports line business background, a secondary degree? Was that kind of something you're like, okay, I need this to kind of get to the next level, or what kind of got you there?
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking Sam Reno and definitely Aaron will probably listen to this, so I've got to pick it carefully. But I only applied to ASU, so my chips were all in the bucket there. But I had done 1 year as a inside sales exec at the LA Clippers after I graduated. And so I was at the Clippers, and my visa was coming to an end, and the Clippers weren't going to sponsor me for the H-1B work visa. And so for me to be able to continue this dream, I needed to stay in America. So that meant going back to school on my F1 visa. And coincidentally, Charles Dickens, who's a former MSLB grad, was a friend of mine from the Rams, and he told me about this program at ASU, and I looked it up, and I remember being like, this is everything I want to study. The curriculum was like the dream classes. And so I kind of went chips all in and met up with Sam, tried my best to impress him. I think I did a halfway decent job because he let me in the program. But so I would say Molly was the first one, and then Sam is my second one of in timeline and of helping me get to where I am. But it was kind of like out of necessity. If I want to keep this train rolling, I've got to go back to school. But I only applied to ASU because it got to a point that I was like, it's either ASU or bust. Like I don't want to do I'm not going to go back and do some random degree that's going to mean nothing. I wanted something that was going to help springboard me.
Right. I think as I graduated from the program, I've talked to other graduates, and I think that's kind of the boiling point is what the program offers. And if you're looking at graduate school in general with different sports degrees, is make sure they offer the classes you're kind of interested in, whether it's like the sport law, or the sports business, or it's both. And I think those types of things, as the listeners and viewers and whatnot are looking into schools, it's like, do they offer cool programs? Kind of look at the alumni, take it all in, see what they got. And I think that's one of the reasons I chose ASU is the cool classes. Phoenix is a massive sports city with all the teams, has a bunch of opportunities. So it's kind of hard to pass up. And then the alumni and just the different people that, have been going there. So, I think that plays a big role as everyone's looking to kind of the next step or as far as their career goes. So that's a cool opportunity there. And so when you created kind of your own sports agency, sports marketing group, I know you had some business dealings, so I don't know how much you want to share with the listeners and whatnot. But so did you start that while you were in school, or did you graduate? And you're like, okay, I got this figured out. Kind of tell us how that came about.
Yeah, so I started my own sports agency, Hawker Family Sports and Entertainment, on July 1 of 2021. And
perfect.
For those listening that have any interest in the college space, they know why it was July 1, 2021. But yes, I will say that when I was in the MSLB program, I had absolutely no intention of being a sports agent. It was not on the cards for me. I had other aspirations, in the college athletics was where I wanted to go. And the agency thing kind of fell into my lap. And to explain why I started it, I was working at a university and I'll probably keep the name out of it, but it's pretty easy to figure out where I was. I was working at a university, and NIL started bubbling up in the conversation around NIL. And I had a relative legal background from ASU. I had a former ex-girlfriend of mine. She was an influencer, and so I handled a little bit of her contracts and influencer marketing sort of stuff in the early days of influencer marketing. And then I saw the university that I was at, and they had good reasoning. I'm not going to badmouth them, but there was a lot of universities that really didn't know how to handle this, and they were kind of choosing. Do we want to move into this space? Do we want to be the university, or do we want to just wait and see what happens? I understand you're a little bit more risk adverse as a senior leadership member because you don't want to rock the ship. I get it. I was not risk adverse. I was in a position where I wanted our school to be the NIL school. I wanted us to jump out ahead of everyone and say, if you want to get better in your NIL space, and if you want to generate income off the field, you have to come to our school, and we're going to help you do that. That was the pitch I wanted to create and put programs in place to help make that happen. But was hit by a few roadblocks again. Understandably, no one knew what was going to happen here, and so I was kind of just like that bull in a china shop. And so I noticed other schools were the exact same way, and so I thought, I'm not sure if we can cuss on the podcast, but we'll just dive in and do our own thing. So I grabbed a few people, some MSLB grads, some close friends of mine, and created a solution to NIL. So we were representing a handful of athletes across the country in all different sports, which if we want to talk agency, I'll circle back on that part. But we're representing all their marketing endeavors and everything. And as a business owner, we've got to make money. And I'll be candid that it took a while to get money coming in, general revenue. And so we saw the opportunity that we understood that there was more money to be made in professional sports still, representing them in their playing contracts. And so kind of shifted the angle of the company as does all startups, and started doing professional athlete contracts and negotiations for their playing contracts. And then in November got acquired and managed to now I'm at a major agency and a full-on sports agent. And so to go back to the MSLB ASU conversation, I did not think I would be here right now, and I'm only 2 years removed. So
right. It's funny to talk to different graduates and different alumni and whatnot. Is you kind of go into the program and you're like, all right, I want to do this. And then after the program, you talk to, you do your information interviews and you kind of get in the industry. And then it's like the majority of the time you're going for A, and then you ended up at B, and you're like, oh, B is actually a lot better than what I thought it was. It's a funny story, but tell the viewers kind of how, what it was like. Obviously you started out with, 0 clients, 1 client, how you kind of arose with your clientele list, kind of what did that look like as far as your pitch, your marketing, kind of give them an inside look on that.
Yeah, I actually started out with 3 clients day of. I got very lucky. They were all 3 Sun Devils. And I'm forever grateful for them. I don't know how I'll ever be able to pay them back, but I'll find some way. But yeah, I had 3 athletes that I was the mentor for when I was at ASU working as a GA. That when all this conversation started coming up, we had very loose obviously I couldn't approach them as an agent. It was more like, what if we had a solution for you that could help you through this new time? There was no official conversation, but they were like, oh, that'd be really interesting. Like, what if there was a company, da, 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 da. And then on July 1, I called them and I was like, I'm approaching you as an agent officially.
There's a company.
And there is a company and I'm running it. So, and so they all signed within the first day or 2. I'm very passive about athletes signing with me. Like, I'm not pushy at all. It's kind of like, here's a contract, sign it whenever you feel like it. Send it to as many attorneys as you want. Send it to your parents, your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles. I'm just so laid back on that. And so they all 2 of them signed that day. 1 waited to the next day to talk to their dad, and fair enough. I actually had a call with their dad as well. And then so I had those 3 clients. it was very interesting because this space was so new. I think a lot of, because we did really well in that we got up to like 40 or 50 athletes within the space of a couple of months. And we worked really hard on our recruiting, which was good. But I don't want to pat myself on the back for that, because I think we had no competition. Like, no other agencies were really in the space at the time. Like, no one came in that hot with the experience and credentials that we had as an agency. So and you see the CAAs and Excels and everything, they hadn't decided to go down this direction yet, because they didn't need to. And so it was I don't want to just say, oh yeah, we got all these athletes. Like, we were lucky that there was no competition. These athletes wanted representation. We were kind of just the answer at the time. And so yeah, we did pretty well pretty early in getting a bunch of athletes.
And then what's, I mean, I know the answer, but kind of for the viewers, what space was this? What sports kind of was the athletes in? Was there a certain sport you're like, all right, if we go to this sport, like this is kind of our bread and butter? Kind of how'd that work?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it was part of my, I have a million things I've learned as a small business owner, but one of them was not niching. But I suppose we're a niche that we're NIL, but we weren't niche that we were representing every type of athlete, from tennis to track to gym, or to soccer, to everything in between. And that was, in my opinion, a mistake, because I couldn't get my head on straight. There was someone competing, like, we had to like run our marketing, but there was someone competing every day doing a different thing. That was stressful in itself, and it seems such a small thing to be stressed about. But understanding how to market different sports is so different, but at the same time, you're marketing the person, not the sport. And so it was difficult. And so we really gained traction in gymnastics, football, and soccer were our main three. We did a little bit of MMA that was doing well. It started sending people to the WWE, which was doing really well. And so I kind of I sound hesitant in naming those, because like, we're one track athlete and she was one of our biggest earners, and so like, I don't want to like take that out. But we were just like, we got a good chunk from different sports, and then when we started to niche down and make those decisions later on, they were the sports that we had chosen were the ones that we were really thriving in, both not just on numbers of athletes, but money coming in as well.
No, and I'm curious, kind of as we're in this NIL kind of talk right now, what are your thoughts going forward as far as kind of the collectives, NIL as a business? Where do you see kind of the industry going, short term, next 3 to 5 years?
Oh, where I think that, it's hard to answer this, because where I think the industry is going versus where I want it to go is two very different things. And so I suppose, to answer your question bluntly, where do I think it's going to go? I'm nervous that the NCAA has filled a president's position with someone that is a politician. And the elephant in the room is, politicians haven't historically been very good at helping the small person. It's just historically the way it is. And so I'm nervous that, as we see, there's already discussions around a templated contract that has to be used, or like a standard agreement that has to be used across NIL, which just makes no logical sense. But they're not listening to people that are doing NIL deals day in, day out. I think we totaled close to 100 deals by the end of our time as like an NIL agency. And so like, I've got decent repetitions in that space. And I don't know the numbers, but I would be vaguely saying that nearly none of them were identical deals. It's like, how do you template that? Little things like that I'm nervous that there's going to be more regulation around it, because the member institutions are going to want their power back, and the NCAA wants their power back. That's kind of where I'm nervous that we're just going to end up clamping down, because at the end of the day, there's no players associations. There's they're not W2'd, so the players can't do anything but just wait and hear. And that's kind of my most heartbreaking thing, is that there's people out there advocating, but we've got no power.
Yeah.
And if they felt like it, that could be a tomorrow decision. Like they're a private entity, well, not for profit, but they can do whatever they want. And there's a lot of really cool and hardworking and great people in the NCAA. I'm nervous that they are going to clamp down again, because it's like saying like, oh, our kids need it's like that overbearing parent. It's like the kids
Yeah.
need us to look after them. It's like, well, maybe they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so where I would love it to go, and if I'm allowed to answer that as well, I would love somewhat of a players association to be created. I say somewhat because the legal framework isn't quite there right now. I would love for them to be the negotiating body for the athletes, so that the athletes do get more freedoms and more ability to use their name, their image, and their likeness. And that's because I'm coming now from a professional lens, where I don't think our athletes now as professional athletes are any different than our college athletes.
Yeah.
And so, and our professional athletes are still governed by a governing body, whether that be the NFL, the NZR, whatever, NZOC, NHL. Everyone's got a governing body that's going to dictate a level of those rules that gets collectively bargained. And so you can still have your rules in place. I just think that right now we're putting more parameters on NIL, which is just so counterintuitive to what we should be doing in a free market society, where you just let the athletes figure it out on their own.
Right.
There's people I think there's enough agents in the space now that's going to at least, I say with an asterisk, look after them. But the thing that I and to touch on, you mentioned collectives as well. I think collectives is a good idea if done correctly. And like the marketing endorsements and all that kind of stuff to like help an athlete choose X school over Y school. I want to say it's bad. But at the same time, my free market heads just says, well, let's put our heads together, figure out a way to pay these kids, even if it isn't substantial money. Like I do a lot of work in the NWSL, and there's not boatloads of money coming in for especially the rookies or the sophomores, but there's enough that they can put food on the table, they can live a regular life. It's like, it's not a boatload of money, but I would love to. I don't want to be the guy that's like, well, just pay them, because I'm not looking at the books every day. I don't have all the answers. I don't know where that money comes from. So I'm not going to try to speak out of turn. But what I will say is that I would love to discuss if there is ways that we can take money from certain places that doesn't hurt certain people. Is there a conversation to have? Because I do not believe we're currently trying to have that conversation.
Right. Yeah. I think it's, there's kind of two coins, where people are still thinking like NIL is bad and it's just like going to be a recruiting nightmare and whatnot, which, is possibly, but, at the end of the day, I think, these athletes, I think it's been more benefit. It's doing more good than it is harm. Like the fact that the NCAAs, they're just trying, as you said, get their power back, and they want to have the cards. And now that kind of Pandora's box is open, and they realize like, oh, well, we're actually not what we think we are. Like we have no control now. They're probably shaking in their boots a little bit, which is why they're trying to, I don't know, did they actually say the standardized contract, or was that just kind of thrown out? Like, cause I did hear that, but I didn't know if like the NCAA, he actually came out and was like, this is what we think we're going to do.
No, well, it definitely wasn't like a proposed plan or anything. It was a floated idea that people took and ran with. But to me, it's just an example of something that they definitely could do. That would just make no logical sense. And then that, opens up Pandora's box again of how strict do they want to take it. So nervous, but I'm always optimistic. I think that I would love to see, and this is me being just bullish and kind of hyper creative in a space that, again, I'm not the one reading the books every day. I don't know how much where the money's getting, or how much money is getting allocated where, but I would love to see it go privatized, and that I don't know how, because I think the education is really important too. So I don't know how the member institutions would fully tie them together. But for example, like a Clemson athletic department breaking off from Clemson University, having an agreement to use the same IP, and I don't know what that agreement could look like. In that agreement, we pay the university back X amount from our earnings, and our students get a scholarship. You can still kind of keep that relationship going. And then Clemson plays in a private competition that is governed by, call it D1,
Right.
whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I immediately know everybody says, oh, well, that's going to hurt your non-revenue generating sports. And then I'm in two minds about that, because I'm like, well, that's free market. And at the same time, I don't think it will, because I'm a huge gymnastics guy now. I've seen the numbers of crowds that pull up at those events. I would just charge gymnastics with going out and figuring out a way to generate revenue off that. I think it's close. I think there's something to be had there. We see leagues like Athletes Unlimited popping up in non-revenue generated sports, like the volleyballs of the world and lacrosse and whatnot, and they're figuring out a way to make money. Yeah. I would just charge a lot of those sports with figuring it out, because when your back's against the wall, I always say I don't say it, but there's a quote, there's nothing more dangerous than a cornered animal. Yeah. And so, you put someone in corner, and I guarantee when it's your livelihood on the line, a lot of these sports figure it out and how to privately generate income.
No, yeah, I'm with you. And then we've seen that, with the gymnastics kind of finals, championship, Final Four, whatever you call it, which just happened, and they did big numbers. And then that kind of the women's, Final Four, Iowa and LSU happened, that did big numbers. So I feel like we're seeing it where it's like, okay, we can push this, and you can start becoming, one of the top revenue generating sports at your school, at your conference, what have you. So I think it's there. It's just like you said, it just kind of needs to be pressed more, and we can figure it out. There's enough people that watch, and there's enough people that want to play, and that companies that want to get involved in sponsorships and whatnot. So it's definitely there, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see where we go with it. I'll be closely watching, but I will say I was starting to get some gray hairs, and the gray hairs have slowed up since leaving college athletics. So I'm not in a rush to come back and help figure that out.
You're just watching the sidelines.
Yeah. I'll be the first one. I'll buy the tickets. I'll help generate the income.
You'll be there in the front row. Yeah, that transitions us well to kind of what you're doing now with Halo. So it's kind of give us the viewers. So with Halo, you're working with the soccer athletes, professionals, as you mentioned. So what does that look like?
Yeah, I'll give you the cliff notes of what we're doing at Halo. So Halo Sport is the talent management of MKTG, or it's a separate business, but Americans are most familiar with MKTG, so it's easiest to explain. Right. We're both owned by Dentsu, so we're kind of like brother and sister in that sense. So we do talent management. We have the largest rugby age or division network in the world. So rugby is kind of the main crux of what we do. However, we have commercials, so we oversee all their sponsorships and their endorsements, or their NIL, which has been quite funny to be in professional NIL after leaving college. Yeah, and then we oversee. We do like a lot of brand consulting and like sports consulting. So brands will work with us, and we help them figure out what sponsorships should they be spending money on, how do they activate, what are cool activations. So that's part of the business. And then we also sell a lot of sports properties as well, so jersey sponsors, assets on the field, etc. So that's kind of the full umbrella of what we do. Personally, I oversee soccer in our Americas, Asia, and South Pacific market, and so we help with the representation of soccer athletes, or footballers as we call it down here. And then I oversee our commercial sales efforts as well. So my two hats is soccer representation and commercial sales. And so I oversee the sales of a handful of assets, be it, I'm trying to think of examples that can paint the picture for an American audience, but like our rugby teams have sponsors on their jerseys, so I sell those sponsors into different markets. I sit on the global sales board of our international MKTG's international group. So kind of getting ideas from different markets to sell into New Zealand and everything. So yeah, the two hats that I wear now. I'll say from a personal level, and MSLB people that are listening, that's something that I've always struggled with, is like picking one thing. Because when I got an opportunity to come in here, my job was created, and it was kind of like, well, what do you want to do? And I had a laundry list. I was like, kind of everything. So I've managed to nail it down right now to two hats, but we'll see where the future goes, because they're quite different jobs. But I love it. I'm happy as, and so yeah, we work out we've got close ties with America. We have offices in New York, Charlotte, Nashville, Tallahassee, San Fran, and LA. So yeah, still very American.
Right. And then so what does your day-to-day kind of look like? I'm sure it differs with different projects or whatnot, but just to kind of give us a little insight on that.
Yeah, I would say that's the other pro to agency is I haven't had the same day twice since I got here months ago. Yeah, it's so interesting, whether it could be working with a player on the activation of their sponsorship, pitching in a multi-hundreds of thousands of dollars up to millions of partnerships, and selling that into a what we call a rights holder or a sports team or organization. Could be negotiating against another club or with another club. For one of my one of our athletes' playing contracts. Yeah, the list goes on. It could be anything. And I think that's what hooks me in every day, is when I sit down at my desk and make my to-do list. It's so abstract. I could really be doing anything. And at the same time, you could get pulled into a meeting. I'm on our retention committee, so we're always coming up with cool, creative. That's where I'm going after this, is our retention meeting. So we're coming up with creative ways to keep our athletes happy, whether that be finding a way to get them tickets to a certain concert that's coming into town. So it's little things like that as well that that might seem little and somewhat easy. You just make a phone call, but it's cool to see the athletes get really excited and hype about that as well. So every day is very different.
Right. And I think, for those that are listening, that you maybe you're in undergrad and you're kind of looking into the sports industry, I feel like anytime you ask someone that works in sports, a lot of their days aren't the same. You're doing different things. You're kind of wearing multiple hats. And I think that's kind of the cool part of the sports industry itself, is you can be doing so many different things, going down so many different avenues that, a lot of the days aren't going to look, like, okay, clocking at 9, then bam, 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 and then I leave. It's like you got so much going on, and sporting events usually start at night, so you're not usually in a 9 to 5 anyways, unless you're, there's a few roles where you would be, but predominantly it's not a normal calendar, is what I'm trying to say.
Not at all. And I think that the upside of agency as well is we're probably the closest thing to a 9 to 5, because we don't have to go to all those games. It's kind of like a nice to do. And I've been on the team sports side, and I think it's quite nice that I can go to sporting events now and not work, which there was a long time there that if I had work that night, my friends were like, oh, you're working at the I was working for the ASU athletic department. So like if I had a night game on a Saturday, it's like, yeah, but you're playing U of A at home. And I'm like, yeah, but that is super cool. Don't get me wrong. It's still work. Whereas now we still get like tickets and suites and all that stuff, and can go and just watch the sport, which is really nice.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And, we enjoy you stopping by today, giving us some insight. I just kind of want to wrap up with a few questions here, like interpersonal skills and whatnot. So I would consider you a sportspreneur and sports entrepreneur, kind of mixed, So what, I guess, as you start, if you could narrow it down, it's probably kind of hard, but 1 to 2 kind of skills or things that, you've seen, like, okay, well, I'm pretty good at this, and this is what's been beneficial since I've been a sportspreneur.
Yeah, wow. I'm going to have to be as specific as possible. So I hope these aren't quick fire questions. I think self-awareness is massive. Knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at, and when to bring in help just for certain things. I don't think it's a skill, but any entrepreneur needs to know these are all self-learnings too. I'll never say that I did it perfectly the first time. I've got plenty of learnings. I would say learn how to crawl before you walk, before you run. Really, really nail things before moving on to the next thing. The reason I say that is, I don't get too many, like, let's just use agency, for example. You don't get too many clients too fast before you can absolutely do the world's best effort with keeping your sanity. And I think that's the line, because like we made it work, and we did our absolute best and did a good job, but I wasn't sleeping very much, and it was all night. It was a lot of work, and I was losing my mind to do it. So I think to keep your sanity and be able to do it is like niche down, find something that you're good at, and then do it really well. And then wait until the market is forcing you to get bigger, rather than racing to get bigger on your own. And what I mean by that is, when you're doing such a good job, people will open doors that need to be opened for you, whether it be money or whatever it might be, rather than you going and trying to open them on your own. If you're doing, like, get to a certain level, obviously, but if you're doing a really good job, it'll open itself up to you. And you'll be able to sleep probably a decent night's sleep. So
that's what we're looking for.
So they're probably two. I would say being malleable, understanding that some days you're going to be an accountant, and some days you're going to be a salesperson, and some days you're going to be a graphic designer, and everything in between. And so just being open to that. I check your ego at the door is a big one. You're not too big to do anything. And so it's that one was I don't want to say like it was an easy one for me, but I spent way too much time in the gym, but like grew up in my early years in that kind of fitness culture where you're trained to check your ego at the door. If you go in the gym just ego lifting, you're gonna put your back out and just look like an idiot. And so checking your ego at the door was always something that I try to think about whenever I do a lot of things, even walking into meetings and going to if I'm pitching a client, you just check your ego at the door. And I think that's been one of the hard things. And most of this advice is sportspreneur. I like that, by the way. But more on the agency side as well, which we might get to. So I'll cut myself off. But on the entrepreneur side, I would say, just be ready to be everything, because you're going to have to. And keep a good attitude. It's fun. You get to make up your days and do whatever you want to do. So
it's the best. It works well. And then I guess, how do you kind of keep up with the industry? Is it Twitter, Sports Business Journal? What are some of the things that you're like, okay, if trying to stay up to date, what are some of the sources you use?
Twitter is a big one, and then my emails, I've got Front Office Sport, Sports Business Journal. I fully understand. I think this is the sales side. You have to be fully aware that while sports is it's very easy to become siloed and think that sports is the world. It's also good to remember that the rest of the world dictates sports. And so I get down here the New Zealand Herald, but Wall Street Journal is one that I'm reading. General news. My Google News is pretty personalized at this point, so I kind of do way too much of that, because I need to understand where we are with like interest rates, mortgage rates, even general inflation, GDP. That's all going to dictate how brands are investing in this space. So when I'm pitching certain brands, I want to know what industries are doing really well at the moment, which ones are hurting, how do I pitch a cool creative idea to a brand that's looking to get into X market, and how do I know they're trying to get into X market? So I watch the real estate industry down here. We're having quite an industrial boom at the moment. Companies from around the world are investing in infrastructure down here. So we're looking at the major shipping companies, your Amazons as well, little things like that you have to learn from outside of the sports industry. So while I would say Front Office Sports is a big one, I listen to every single Sporticast episode on Sportico, the podcast on Spotify, or I listen on Spotify. They're excellent, really cool guys. Evan Novi Williams and Scott Sashnik. And so worth listening to them. But yeah, I would say, and you can kind of tell from my answer, you've just got to be a sponge. Look for your news in every way that you can get it, because knowledge is power in this industry.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I think the more information you can kind of, as you're saying, be a sponge, but then it also goes into, if you're talking to, an athlete, or you're talking to another business person, you have this wealth of information. Okay, I can bring this idea into here. I can correlate this, with this thought. And I think it just makes you kind of look more well-rounded, and you're not just strictly like in one sector. And then someone asks you about, something else, and you just have no idea. And you just like, just being well-rounded, I think, is key. And especially in the sports industry going forward.
Absolutely. And I think even conversationally, which is exactly what you've just said, I despise the term networking, and there's a whole lot of reasoning behind that. But I don't like networking, but at the same time, when you are building those initial relationships with new people, if you are able to talk a sentence or two on each topic that they might bring up,
right,
it's going to help you to build those relationships and not even seem impressive, because that's not really the point. It's more so like they think that you're interested in what they're trying to talk about, which is general human interaction. So, so I think that's powerful as well, especially at a young age. You don't really want to be caught out and someone bring up, oh, did you see the NIL deal where that kid goes to Tennessee? And you can't say, oh, it's the guy's name and he's the quarterback and it was worth 1.2. And like, if you don't have that sort of base knowledge, you could miss some pretty good opportunities.
Right. And kind of going down that connecting with people in relationships is have you had, I mean, you mentioned Molly in the beginning, but as far as mentors, what are your thoughts on mentors and how our viewers should go about getting mentors?
Yeah, and I was looking forward to answering this one, but this is why I would say that I promised I read the question, but this is probably one that I think we've actually stuck to, that I remember reading. But the thing with mentors is I don't think any of my mentors would know they're my mentor, in that I don't think I've outlined it as saying like, will you be my mentor? Which is funny because, and I hope this person doesn't listen. One person that asked me to be his mentor is currently starting his own sports agency. So I get why he picked me, but I had to say, just so you're aware, I'm an agent at a different agency. I'm not going to be able to like tell you all the secrets and trade secrets of how I did my stuff. I'll answer your random questions if you're like, hey, how did you start a business account? Or I don't know what it could be. I'll help there, but like, don't expect my 2 cents on everything. And so you've kind of got to be somewhat smart about who you're asking or creating that relationship with. But that's kind of to answer your question better. I have a ton of incredible mentors that I consider mentors, but they're more so just friends that are years ahead in their career. And I think that's the big thing, is I don't want to have a mentor that I won't have a beer with as well. And having a relationship is really important to me. I want to know how their family is. I want to know what they're up to on the weekends, as well as how did they handle this negotiation, or how did they come up with X idea? Or I know that when I was in a position of choosing jobs, and even through acquisition and bouncing between career jobs, being able to call some of these people as friends and be like, hey, I've got this opportunity, what do you think of this? I'm more interested in making friends than having this official mentor title, because I think that creating a title of mentor puts unnecessary stress on that person to like, does that mean I have to be on a monthly call every second Wednesday of the month? Is that our time? Like, and keep in mind, as a young person in this industry, they don't owe you anything, and you can't pay them for that, or they're not going to get anything out of it. So you're better off making a friend, because everyone's willing to help a friend out. But if you come in too early with this, like, hey, we just met, like, I don't know what I would do if someone came up to me 2 minutes after meeting me and was like, will you be my mentor? I'd be like, I don't even know you. So my advice, to kind of answer this better, my advice would be to start building relationships with people in higher positions than you. Everybody would, 90% of people would take an informational interview, just jump on the call and then do that a few times. Don't even mention the word mentor, just keep doing those and be like, hey, so this, like, an example would be Jeff Price from the PGA, who's on our board at the MSLB. Him and I have had multiple chats, and so I'm trying to avoid the word mentor and trying to explain this, but Jeff and I have had a lot of conversations in the past. We're at a point now that, like, if I saw the PGA of America doing something really interesting, i.e. when they moved from Florida to Texas, I was able to send him an article, thought this was really cool, Jeff. Love to jump on a call and kind of hear more about the process, and then we jump on a call and talk about like what that's looking like. Cool, thanks for the chat. I find another reason to chat to him when it comes up. And then after, this was years ago when they moved, I think 2020 actually. Now we're down the line and we're in a position where I could call them and just say hi because I'm bored. And that's the sort of thing that we really need to be doing as young people in this industry, is not being so structured about our relationship with our mentors and just start making friends, so to speak.
No, I like that. Making friends first, because I feel like a lot of times, people come in a little bit too hot, right? And it's like, hey, I'm so and so, and I graduated from this program, and do you guys have any jobs? And I feel like that would instantly, like, if I was in some sort of like job hiring, like, that's a no to that person. That, like, what, coming in, like, like I said, you got to build the friendship, be able to be relatable, be a person. Don't just be like some random message in an inbox. I guess it's not going to get anyone anywhere. And it's, for the other person, it's got to be somewhat like a give take. There's got to be some value added, because we all have lives. They're busy too. So,
that's exactly it. If you can find way to add value, if I think perspective is a really good value add to a lot of people in high up positions. I think that's what you lack when you get up there. It's hard to keep understanding what like the general consumer looks like, and why a lot of commissioners push owners of their league to be a season ticket holder for a season before they can buy a team, because you really want to understand what it's like, the perspective of being a general consumer. So perspective is something that you can always offer. And it's hard because I know that if you're still in college, you're like, well, I've got nothing to offer, but it's still like general conversation's always nice, making someone feel like they're a regular human, especially people in very high up positions. I would say that, like you said, if you come in hot, like, hey, this is me, I do this, and you go into your elevator pitch immediately, it's like, firstly, I don't want to sound rude, but they probably don't care. But they're probably more interested in you as just a general person. So if you're like, hey, I'm such and such, I went to this college too, where did you live? Where was your dorm? Like something like that could kind of bring you out, and be a little bit different. Leave them wanting to know, I wonder where this kid works, or I wonder
wonder what's going on here.
100%. So I think the advice there would just be, take it slow and just start making, like, even if you're like, it's a 2-second conversation, you bump into them at some conference, like, hey, I really appreciated that chat you gave on such and such. I thought that was quite interesting. Thanks very much. Have a good day. Vanish. And then hope that it sounds weird, but it's like it's kind of like dating, but like you just vanish, show up again and say something that gets them going, maybe crack up a conversation, but just try to chill a little bit.
And it's a perfect example, kind of what you're doing with sending the articles, you just being interested in kind of like, especially their career, and kind of how you could, maybe add things to it, or like, oh, I saw this, like what's going on here. Just being a normal like conversation, bringing that out kind of grows the friendship, grows the relationship. And it's not like, hey, let's network, because it's like, okay, well, as we said, not people might not be super interested in just doing that. If you're just coming out of college and they're 15 years into their career or whatever it is. So something to keep in mind.
I always say, like, I'm only a couple of years out, but I'm the worst person to use as an example because I'm certainly not. I haven't made it or anything. But I think if I had an opportunity where there's like a college kid that was like, oh, can we grab a beer and have a yarn or have a chat? Like, I'm more interested in just having a good time and
Right.
having fun and good conversation than like making a real formal thing about it. So yeah, and I can only imagine it's only going to get more the case that it's like, oh, this guy wants to hang out with me. So yeah, I think that could be something too, is just be quite colloquial about it.
Yep. No, I'm with you there. And we appreciate your time stopping by today. I know you're busy out there in New Zealand, and I told myself I'd refrain from the jokes, but we're at the tail end of our day here. You're just getting your day started in the future. So we know you're off to the races there, but we appreciate your time. And if you have any, I guess, last words, if you want to, promote any of your clients or socials or whatnot, I'll just kind of give you the floor here to do whatever you need to do.
Promoting Halo would be too cliche. Everyone knows where to find Halo, but everybody listening, if you're not currently a student in the MSLB program or at the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law, you need to start applying because it's the best program in the world.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll clip that, add that to our clips, and we'll send it out. So I appreciate your time today, Tay, and we're looking forward to seeing where you and Halo grow and the different connections and business opportunities that are there for the future. So thanks again for stopping by, and we'll stay in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, mate.
Yep, we'll see you.